Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Doctor Who, The Curse of Fatal Death is a Doctor Who special made specifically for the Red Nose Day charity telethon in the United Kingdom and was originally broadcast in 4 parts on BBC One on the 12th of March 1999. Before the Doctor can settle down to married life, he must face one last confrontation with his deadly enemy of certain death, the Master. The Curse of Fatal Death. Howdy beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're all doing well, hope you're good. As per usual, as you heard in that absolutely wonderful introduction, I'm going to be talking about Doctor Who, The Curse of Fatal Death, that broadcast in the 12th of March 1999. Today is Comic Relief, and it is the 25th anniversary of this film, or shall we say made-for-TV short film. And I'm really, really excited to get into what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on anything that I am doing. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It means the world to me. We are growing so vastly on Spotify and we're growing so vastly on YouTube that I can't keep up. It's incredible. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's supporting me on all my different platforms. It means the world. Thank you very much. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about The Curse of Fatal Death today, which is its 25th anniversary, which, to be honest, makes me feel old because, and I'll get onto this later on, but this short film is just silly, it's fun, it's wonderful. Every time that Comic Relief is on, I would love them to do a sequel to it. As of yet, they haven't, but it's just one of those films that even though it is not canon, it is still at heart Doctor Who. And I just wanted to, today on its 20th anniversary and Comic Relief, I wanted to share a bit of love, share a bit of comedy, and share a bit of fun at the end of the day, because that's what Comic Relief is all about. Comic Relief is about bring a positive and lasting change in the lives of poor and disadvantaged people by bringing comedy and hilarity and all kind of silliness to the world, and then hopefully raise some money that people who are less fortunate can have a decent life. Kind of the idea of like Patch Adams. The best way to cure somebody is through laughter. And I'm a big believer of that. I'm a very positive person. If anybody's listened to the podcast long enough knows that Luke is a very positive person. Even the things that he doesn't like, he tries to find the good in everything. And that's the kind of person I am. So I'm a big lover and big supporter of Comic Relief. I watch it every year on TV. I go out, I buy the Red Nose, I buy the T-shirts, I donate. I do everything that I can to make sure that people who are disadvantaged get the life that we all deserve and we all should have through comedy. And I love comedy, and I'm a very positive person. So getting to talk today about two things that I love greatly, Doctor Who and Comic Relief and Red Nose Day, is absolutely wonderful treat. And I'm glad that I get to do it, and I get to have a platform like podcasts that will allow me to do that. And thank you for everybody for listening and supporting it. It means a lot to me. So before we get on to that, my sort of journey so far through reviewing Doctor Who movies, for anybody who is jumping in right today, thank you for jumping on. I hope you stick around. But for anybody who has kind of watched along with this series so far, about last year, I was listening to Big Finish, and I got to the point where Paul McGann came up, and I was going to jump into his next sort of Big Finish story. As I read up about it, I realised that his Big Finish stories take place straight after the first Paul McGann movie. Now, I'd never watched it, and I was just like, well, I've got to go back and watch that before I can start my big finish. Continue my big finish journey. Problem being, and it's not really a problem, more just the fact of I went to go watch it, and then as I realised as I was googling Doctor Who films that there was the Peter Cushing movies. I didn't even know that Peter Cushing did Doctor Who, and this is how bad I have been as a Doctor Who fan. And I have made amends for this because I have gone back and I've watched both Peter Cushing movies. I've also reviewed them both. They're on Spotify and they're on YouTube. If you want to check them out after you've listened to this episode, I highly recommend that. Then around Christmas time, actually I think by the end of Christmas, as a New Year's treat, I watched and reviewed the Doctor Who the movie with Paul McGann. So you can go listen to that one. That one was a lot of fun. And it continues today with this one. Even though this is the TV movie, it's only short. It's about 20 minutes long. It's still, I would still class it as a film. It still had a film sort of production. It was silly, wonderful, and like I said, it's Doctor Who, so I've got to talk about it. So that's to kind of bring people up to speed. Listen to the old episodes if you haven't already, or if you have, go back and listen to them because, that support means a lot to me, So we're all about positivity here today, guys. So if you want to go back and listen to them, if you haven't already, please do. And if you have listened to them, share them about to people that you think might like them, and share this one because this one is going to be very, very important also. So before I get into talking about the movie and sort of talking about the cast and my thoughts and feelings on it, I want to take a moment to talk about the history of Comic Relief, the history of Red Nose Day. Now, I'm currently on the Comic Relief website, and I'm glad they did this because, it makes my job a lot easier, but also, and I will share this link on my Twitter for people that are interested, they have a step-by-step history of Red Nose Day all the way up to 2023. To the very, very beginning. So if I scroll all the way down to the bottom to the 1980s, all the way down to 1988, first Red Nose Day. The very first Red Nose Day was in 1988 and raised a huge £15 million. Over 30 million people tuned in to watch Blackadder, The Cavalier Years, and The Young Ones are University Challenge, Mel Smith and Kim Wilde. Then they did another one in 1989. Over 20 million people across the UK took part in 70,000 activities for Red Nose Day in 1989, raising 26.9 million. On TV, we saw the premiere of Night of the Comic Dead, and a terrifying tale of ordinary folks haunted by a disgusting array of comic ghouls, from French and Saunders to Frank Coulson. Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders and Kathy Burke reached number 3 in the UK chart with the single La 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 Nooney, with a little help from Bananarama. It gives you the full history, so anybody who's interested can come and have a full look. Sadly, they don't have the year I was born, but they have, like, in 1999, saw Johnny Depp and Dawn French in a Vicar of Dibley special, and Alan Partridge performing his Kate Bush medley. Boyzone reached number 1 with When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Gets Going. Red Nose Day, 1999, broke records, including the most naked people on stage at one time. A total of 35 million pounds was raised. The year before, in 1997, again, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders and Kathy Burke joined Spice Girls in remaking their iconic music video for the single Who Do You Think You Are, selling 672,577 copies, and over 27 million was raised. It's been going on for years. Like in 1997, 72% of people in the UK took part in Red Nose Day. In 1993, and 3,307,000 of them brought the delightful tomato-style nose. On TV, we saw Mr. Bean in a Bling Day spectacular, whilst Angus Dayton, Ian Hislop and Paul Merton took in a number of sporty celebs in Have I Got a Question of Sport for You. An amazing total of 18 million was raised. It's wonderful that what they've done. They've done all this, you can actually go back and read it all. I remember, for example, I think it was like 2005, they had Little Britain and Elton John, and then they had one with, like in 2007, millions watched as Catherine Tate, infamous schoolgirl character, Lauren, Seriously, Am I Bothered, former Prime Minister, and Tony Blair at number 10, and Borat made a unique TV appearance live from Kazakhstan. Tara Palmer Tompkinson was crowned Queen of the Celebrity Singers in Comic Relief does Fame Academy, and Sir Alan Sugar fired Piers Morgan in the thrilling Comic Relief does The Apprentice final. The official music single, Walk This Way by Girls Aloud and the Sugar Babes, hit the top of the charts, while I'm the Proclaimers, I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles, featuring Peter Kay as Phoenix Knight, Brian Potter and Matt Lucas as Little Britain's Andy Pipkin, became the fastest selling video download ever. Thanks to Red Nose Day 2007, raised a whopping £67.7 million. And it just goes on. What they've done throughout history and throughout the years is absolutely incredible. Like if we take it all the way up to quite recently, so last year we had, thanks to the amazing public, this year 2023, we raised an amazing £35,310,407. Emma, Oti, and Ryland climbed the cold and unforgiving Karen Gore Mountain in the Scottish Highlands. Radio 1's very own Arlie Free took on 50 hours of cycling over 5 days, whilst Dij non-stop. And at the eve of Red Nose Day, Greta Jones kept dancing for an entire 24 hours. The night of TV took place in Safford, Manchester, and was presented by AJ Ododo, David Tennant, Joel McDermott, Paddy McGuinness, and Zoe Ball. They've been going for a very, very long time. And Comic Relief was launched live on Noel Edmonds' Late Late Breakfast Show on BBC One on Christmas Day in 1985 from a refugee camp in Sudan. The idea for Comic Relief came from the charity worker Jane Tolston, who established it as the operating name of Charity Projects, a registered charity in England, on the 4th, 5th and 6th of April 1986. The inaugural live fundraising show, Comic Relief Utterly Live, was staged at the Shrewsbury Theatre in London, featuring popular alternative comedians and pop stars including Rowan Atkinson, Billy Connolly, Stephen Fry, Lenny Henry, Kate Bush and Cliff Richard. An audio recording was released on WEA, which included a live performance of the charity single Living Doll by Cliff Richard and the Young Ones. The highlight of Comic Relief is Red Nose Day. On the 8th of February 1988, Lenny Henry went to Ethiopia and celebrated the very first Red Nose Day telethon. Over 150 celebrities and comedians participated. The event raised £15 million and attracted 30 million television viewers on BBC One. To date, Richard Curtis and Lenny Henry are still active participants of the Red Nose Day telethon, which continues to raise funds for numerous charities that help children in need and tackle the worldwide poverty. The one fundamental principle behind working at Comic Relief is the Golden Pound principle, where every single donation, every pound, is spent on charitable projects. All operating costs, such as staff salaries, are covered by corporate sponsors or interest earned on money waiting to be distributed. So basically, every single pound that you give to Comic Relief will go to a charitable organisation. It won't go to the celebs. It won't go to the skits. All that is done by sponsors. Every single pound that you donate, so if you donated £10, that £10 would go to somebody. And if they raise £15 million, £15 million would be shared out of all the charity organisations that Comic Relief works with, and it will be given to those people, every single penny, pound. It's a wonderful thing that they do. I'm a huge supporter of it. I watch it every year. When I was in school, primary school and secondary, we always dressed up and we did things to raise money. Same when I was in college, same when I was at university, and now that I'm at work, hopefully we can see if I can get some people at work to do some things. I'm a big supporter of it. I'm a big should we say lover of Comic Relief. If you would like to donate, there is a section on the website which tells you how to do that. So making a donation and paying in money. How can I make a donation? Thank you so much for wanting to make a donation to Comic Relief. It's really easy to donate to us, and there are many different ways you can make your donation. You can do it online using a credit card, debit card, Google Pay, Apple Pay or PayPal, or on the phone. Call 03 457 910 910 and use your credit or debit card to make a donation. You can do checks, other ways of doing donations. You can do fundraising and give the money in that. Or if you're like me and you like clothes, then TK Maxx currently has a Comic Relief Red Nose Day celebration and partnership with Aardman. Aardman Studios do Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Little, Shaun the Sheep, and they did Early Man and like Feathers McCaw, all sort of the favours. If you go to Tiki Maxx in the UK, you can actually buy Wallace and Gromit and Feathers McCaw, Chicken Little styled Red Nose Day t-shirts, which I will be doing, or already done because this is pre-recorded. I probably would have already done this. But since 2005, TK Maxx, HomeSense, all of our customers have raised over £31.5 million for comic relief, and we're ready to raise even more this year with our cracking new Red Nose Day range featuring iconic Aardman characters like Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, and friends. At least £5.50 donated to Comic Relief for every adult t-shirt sold. Who does the money help? In the UK and around the world, there are Comic Relief funded projects helping children and young people. The Rainbow Child and Family Centre works with parents and children in one of the most disadvantaged areas of Northern Ireland, connecting families to community support and enhancing children's development and improving parents' ability to successfully raise their children. I won't go through it all, but if you go on the TK Maxx website, if you are interested, they've got loads of t-shirts, sweatshirts, water bottles, mugs, notebooks, lunch bags, aprons, pouches. They've got a lot there, and a lot for everybody. They've also got bags and soft toys. There's so much to go through. So if you are an Aardman fan like I am, and you want to support Comic Relief, and you live in the UK, get yourself down to TK Maxx, deck yourself out, deck your kids out, deck your nieces and nephews. If that's how you want to donate, all the money will then go to those in need, and you'll have yourself some swanky new Aardman style clothes. So why not? So yeah, so that's how you can help out if you would like. I just wanted to have a sort of quick talk about Comic Relief. It's an old and long charity. It's been around for a very, very long time, and it's very, very wonderful. It really, really is, and they do a lot of great things. And I haven't done it justice. I really, really haven't. Generally, if you go on their website, they have tons and tons of information about them, about what they do, about all the things that they have done, all the money they have raised so far, all the people and lives that they have changed. It's an amazing organization, and I'm just so glad that I get to kind of have like I said, have a platform where I can share with the world all the things that they do. I think they have a Comic Relief in the UK, in America as well, in the rest of the world. I don't think it's just the UK. But if you listen to this and you do have the ability to donate, please do. This episode, I'll try my best to get it released on the day of Comic Relief, so there is still time when you listen to this, or even afterwards, to donate. They're always taking donations, so whenever you listen to this, either during Comic Relief or after Comic Relief, whatever you can spare, donate it to these guys, because it will go 100% to charity organisations, and it will change the lives of millions and billions of people in the UK and around the world. So thank you very, very much to Comic Relief for existing, and thank you for listening to my talk on Comic Relief. But moving on to the film, so Doctor Who Curse of Fatal Death. First of all, I want to talk about the cast, because to be honest, as well as it being a really fun short film, the cast is what makes it for me. So we have Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor. We have Richard E. Grant as the Doctor. We have Jim Broadbent as the Doctor. We have Hugh Grant as the Doctor. We have Joanna Lumley as the Doctor. Yes, the first ever time we actually saw a female Doctor was in The Curse of Fatal Death, and it was Joanna Lumley. And she was wonderful. She was gorgeous. She was incredible. And to be honest with you, I would have genuinely loved to see Joanna Lumley as the Doctor. To be honest, I would love to see Hugh Grant as the Doctor, Jim Broadbent as the Doctor, Richard E. Grant as the Doctor, Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor. Like, I know it's all played for comedy, but each one of them, and I'll talk about it more in the review, plays the Doctor so well, but for so little time, that you cherish the small amount of time that you had as them, but you wish that you had, like, you got to see more episodes with them as the Doctor. They all did a fantastic job. Like, generally, I believe that if Doctor Who didn't sadly die with Sylvester McCoy in the 80s, and I know they tried to revive it with Paul McGann, but if Doctor Who had continued, genuinely, I feel like we would have seen Richard E. Grant or Hugh Grant or Jim Broadbent, or even potentially Rowan Atkinson, Joanna Lumley, or even you could say is Who's the guy who's on QI? Alan. Alan from QI. You know what I'm talking about. If you're English, you know what I'm talking about. Um, but generally, like I could have seen a lot of people play the Doctor, and obviously I love Christopher Eccleston. I think he did fantastic in 2005. But I'm sure if Doctor Who had carried on and it never had died, we would have saw these actors potentially in the roles when they were a lot smaller before they got really big as they are today. Um, Also, as well, we have Julia Swahala as Emma. We've got Jonathan Price as the Master, and we've got Roy Skelton as the voice of one Dalek, and David Chapman as the voice of another Dalek. So that is the cast of this wonderful film. Now I'm going to talk shortly about sort of my first time viewing this film. Again, I thought this film was a joke. I didn't know that this film existed a couple of years ago. I will admit, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, that I don't know everything about Doctor Who. To be honest, I don't think anybody does apart from the creators of Doctor Who. Nobody knows everything about it because it is so big. It's been going on for so long. As well, you've got Big Finish and you've got all the novels and you've got all the comics as well. There is so much to deep dive into Doctor Who. I'll be the first to admit that I don't know everything about Doctor Who. But I love exploring and I love reading and I love learning about Doctor Who. And I remember a couple of years ago, I saw shots from this short film being posted on Twitter, and I just generally thought it was a joke. Wasn't real. That it was fake. And people were like, no, no, this is real. It's called The Curse of Fatal Death. It was done for Red Nose Day in the end of the 90s, 1999. It's really, really funny. And then I remember I got in touch with a friend who I knew Doctor Who and I knew to trust them. And they were like, yeah, yeah, it's true. And they sent me a link because you can watch this movie in its entirety for free, by the way, on YouTube. And I watched it and I fell in love. And then once I finished watching it, I'll be honest with you, I went back and I watched it again. It's about 20 minutes long. It's not a long film, it's only short. I've actually been talking longer than the actual show's on for. Um, but it's only 20 minutes long, but I ended up, after watching it, I went back and I watched it a good two more times because it was so funny. It was so clever. It was written by Stephen Moffat, who, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you know that he was the showrunner with Russell T Davies, and I think he was actually showrunner until Peter Capaldi left, and I think then Chris Chibnall took over. But it was directed by John Henderson, written by Stephen Moffat. It is clever, it is silly, it is fun. To be honest, what I love about this film, and I will go into more detail in a bit in the review, but it take obviously by this stage, Doctor Who had been going for quite a while, and what it does and what they do with this film is that they take all the tropes of Doctor Who and they make fun of it. They take the points of, like, as a fan, you can't sit there and disagree of like, yeah, no, that, you know, you can sit there and go, yeah, that is what Doctor Who is. That's what Doctor Who does. For example, there's a big joke in this about where the Doctor, where like some big explanations, this big sort of speech will go on, and then one of the companions goes, "What does that mean?" And the Doctor will go, "I'll tell you about it later." And it was a look back into Doctor Who about, because that's what they did in the show, was the fact of he had this big speech and a companion was like, "What does that mean?" Or the audience was like, "What does that mean?" And the Doctor will go, "Oh, I'll talk about it later." The Doctor never did talk about it later. It never came up again. It was just a way to be like, instead of talking about it, or easier for the writers even to be like, yeah, we don't have to explain this, just be the fact of the Doctor knows, and then we'll move on. There were a lot of moments like that, and it's so clever and it's so much fun. And I remember the first time I watched it, I just fell in love, and I'm going to fall in love again of watching it now for this review. But like I said, it is free to watch on YouTube. Just type in Doctor Who: The Curse of Fatal Death. I think it's actually on the official Doctor Who YouTube channel. It'll probably want to be the first ones that come up. Click on it, watch it, and then listen to my review. It's funny, it's silly, it's just great. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop blubbering and I'm just going to get on with it. Make sure that you check out Comic Relief. Make sure that you donate. And let's get into it, shall we? Allons-y. So I have just finished watching A Curse of Fatal Death. I've now seen it twice. I've also seen the behind the scenes footage of the making of this parody. And honestly, I will put my hands up now and say that this is the best non-episode of Doctor Who that we have ever had. And I'll explain why later. As for the story, it's set into two parts. So you have the first part where the Doctor invites the Master to meet him on a planet, and that they have a little sparring match. Basically, the Master thinks that he's got the Doctor in a trap, and he's like, I knew that you were going to come here, so I went back in time and I met the architect and I bribed him so that he can change the design. And he goes, meet the eternal spikes. And the Doctor and his companion are turned around, and then this comes back around, and the Doctor's like, well, actually, I knew you would do that, so I went back in time and I took the architect to dinner, and I had him install this comfortable sofa. And it goes back and forth like that. And the overall sort of story of the first one is that the Doctor it wants to say to his biggest enemy, his biggest foe, the Master, that he wants to retire, that he has saved the universe and saved all the planets in it multiple times, and that he's found the love of his life, and he wants to get married, and he wants to stop and settle down. Obviously, the Master can't allow this, and he wants to throw him into 500 miles of sewer underneath the castle. But it being the Master and it being a comedy, doesn't work. He ends up falling in, and he spends about, I think, in total 936 or 926 years in this sewer. He actually falls into it about 2, 3 times, and each time he gets older and older each time. It's absolutely great. The comedy in the first one is fun and hilarious, and the Daleks show up. And then the second part of the story is kind of where it goes very, very crazy. It doesn't feel as long as the first half, but it's very sort of quick and funny and witty. And this whole series, this whole sort of mini TV shows, mini episode, just works, and it makes me wish that we got more of it. It makes me wish genuinely that this is something that Comic Relief did every year. It was like they added to it. It's like even if you didn't bring the same doctors, every year just had new doctors. Or now it being its 25th anniversary, I'd like to think, fingers crossed, I haven't yet seen the new Comic Relief special for 2024. But I'd like some sort of nod to it, some sort of announcement being like, oh, we did a sequel to it, because it deserves it. It needs a sequel. It is silly. It is funny. It is witty. It is clever. It plays on all the tropes and all the comedy between the banter between the Doctor and the Master, as well as the Doctor and the Daleks, and really techno babble and tons of scientific jargon that nobody really knows what it is they're saying, but it sounds scientific, it sounds futuristic, it's complete techno babble, but that is just what Doctor Who is and has always been. The Doctor saying loads of technical language, especially the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, saying a lot of technical language, and then you as the audience having no idea what he just said, and he will not explain what he means or what he just said. He would just say it, sound really, really clever, and then we move on with the scene. And again, it's that whole idea of, as I sort of call back to later, I'll explain later. That joke is so much more funny if you know the context of Doctor Who, because the Doctor never explains. There's never a moment in Doctor Who where he says this big sort of technobabble, or he goes, the world will be destroyed, but I will save it. How are you going to save it? I'll explain later. You know, it always happens in Doctor Who, and even in modern Doctor Who are guilty of this. It's not something that classic Doctor Who just does. It still happens today in modern Doctor Who, and I love it. Whenever it appears, I'm always reminded of the scene in this parody where I think like the Doctor and Rowan Atkinson's Doctor and Emma, his companion, are sitting at a table. They're sitting in the chairs. They're back to back. They're being held hostage by the Master and the Daleks. And they say something about, Emma says, how can the galvanic beam destroy the whole universe? And she turns around, she says to the Doctor, and the Doctor looks back and goes, I'll explain later. And they all nod of like, yeah, that's a fair enough answer. And then Emma asks the Daleks of like, hold on a second, why are there chairs? Why do the Daleks have chairs? Why is there chairs here? And the Dalek just looks at her and goes, we'll explain later. It's silly. It's funny. but it works because it plays on the tropes of what Doctor Who is. You have to imagine up to this point, Doctor had been going for a good few years, um, and it'd been cancelled for a while, and it's just one of those where, because it's so old and they've had so many episodes, you can poke fun of it. You can be like, if it's going on long enough, you can make jokes, and there's a high potentiality majority of people have seen Doctor Who, so they will understand what you're trying to do and trying to say. It just works, and I love it for that so much, because um, they don't have to hold your hand. It's just the fact if you've seen the show, you'll understand it, or even if you haven't seen Doctor Who, you'll still get some enjoyment out of it because it's silly, it's fun, you know. So I love that the mix of parody and comedy mixed in with sort of the Doctor Who lore, and especially it being Stephen Moffat as well, who wrote it, who would go on with Russell T Davies to do revive the series, and then when Russell left, Stephen stayed on, and then he left after sort of Pete Capaldi left, and those are my favourite years of Doctor Who because of the witty writing, how good of a writer Stephen Moffat is, and how good of a writer Russell T Davies is. So it all works perfectly in conjunction with parody, comedy, Doctor Who, and everything that this wants to do, it does fantastically. As for Rowan Atkinson as the Ninth Doctor, honestly, he's the best Doctor we never had or never was, shall we say. Apparently, according to the behind the scenes documentary that I watched, Rowan Atkinson had wanted to play the Doctor for years, and this was like his best sort of moment to be the Doctor, and he is. We get to see most of this short film is Rowan Atkinson's Doctor, and he's just got the look. You know, you can sort of make the argument he is kind of playing Blackadder, sort of, but we all know Rowan Atkinson is a comedic genius. So he just, the way he can say the lines but keep a straight face, it just works perfectly, and it works perfectly for the Doctor as well. He looks like the Doctor. He feels like the Doctor. He has that sort of, if like basically if they said like after Shooty Gatwa it was going to be Rowan Atkinson, I'd be like, great. Even Rowan Atkinson now, even though he's older, I'd be like, that's perfect, perfect casting, because Rowan, he's a great actor. He's not just a great comedic actor, but he's just a great actor in general. And I think he is one of the best Doctors that we never got, and it's the same for the rest of the Doctors here. You know, this, and then after sort of Rowan dies, he is the Ninth Doctor. Then we get the 10th Doctor, which is Richard D. Grant, which again, he plays the quite handsome Doctor. He's suave, he's sexy, he's just a bundle of, like, I would say chaotic energy, but we don't get to see a lot of chaotic energy. It's more so just a bundle of gorgeous handsomeness, because Richard D. Grant, he is a very handsome man, and he licks the mirror and he goes, oh, very suave and cool. It's like, oh, and it's kind of great as well because this is the first time we actually see Richard E. Grant as the Doctor, especially in live action in this parody. But he will go on to play, should we say, voice the Doctor in the Scream of Sacre, I think it is. I think I'm mispronouncing that word. I think it's called the Scream of Shakla. Yeah, I was right. I just googled it, Scream of Shakla, and he is the animated Doctor. Basically, kind of quick introduction to it. So before the revival series with Chris Eccleston, there was a plan and an idea to kind of have Russell E. Grant be the next Doctor, and that he was going to be introduced as the sort of Doctor in sort of a web series, an animated web series, and that was going to be sort of the chronological sort of sequel to the Doctor after sort of Paul McGann. Sadly, sort of it didn't stick, it didn't stay, and eventually, it went cold, and then we got Chris Eccleston as a Doctor, which I'm not complaining about because I love Chris Eccleston. I can talk all day about how much I love Chris Eccleston and his run of the Doctor and him in general. But it's kind of fitting how we got a live action Richard in The Curse of Fatal Death, and he would then go on to play the Ninth Doctor in Scream of Chakra. I feel like I'm butchering that name, but it's just funny how he gets to play the Doctor twice, but two different types of Doctors. I haven't yet watched the animated series, so I don't know what kind of Doctor he plays there. But in this one, he plays the quite handsome Doctor, and he does it fantastically. Then he sadly gets electrocuted and dies and comes back as the 11th Doctor, who is Jim Broadbent, which again, I feel like I've seen behind the scenes footage somewhere, someone saying that they wanted Jim Broadbent to be the Doctor at one stage. I feel like that is something true. Don't quote me on it, but I feel like I've heard it somewhere. But he plays the Shy Doctor, and we don't get a lot of him. I feel like he's on screen the less amount of time as the other Doctors. But when he appears, it's great because he appears and he's like, "Oh," Emma's like, "Oh, Doctor, you've changed," and he looks and goes, "Oh, you're a girl." He's like, "Don't look at me." He's really shy. Like he can't talk to women. He's hiding in the corner. He's like, "Oh, yes, you're still here." And then the Master comes. Oh God, I haven't mentioned the Master. He has galvanic sort of, not galvanic, he's got like transmitters on his chest that look like breets, and I remember like Richard D. Grant goes to him, "Nice breasts," and he's just great, and Jim Broadbent looks at him and goes, "Oh God, another girl." Oh, and the Master's like, "I'm not a girl, these are not breets, they are emitters, and they pick up loads of other things," and it walks off in a sort of huff and a puff. And then Jim Broadbent's like, "Wow, oh, yes," and then Emma's like, "Oh, maybe you should try fixing the machine before it all blows up." And then Jim Broadbent's he's like, "Yes, okay, fine." And then she's watching him do it, and he goes, "Oh, please don't watch me while I do it. Maybe I'll go around the back." He goes around the back, gets electrocuted again. He comes back as Hugh Grant, the handsome Doctor. Well, I would say sort of Richard E. Grant is the quite handsome Doctor because he is, but just have Hugh Grant as the handsome Doctor. I would say like the devilish sort of Doctor, or even have Richard E. Grant as the devilish handsome Doctor, and then just have Hugh Grant as the quite handsome Doctor. I'll be honest with you, I'm straight, but if I had to choose between them, I would go Richard E. Grant. That's my personal preference. I'll explain why later. And Hugh Grant, again, he comes out as a handsome Doctor, and he's suave. He's Hugh Grant. He plays himself, basically. Like if you've seen, I think Notting Hill, or if you've seen, what's it called now? What's that film called now? Bridget Jones's Diaries. He basically plays himself in this film. I mean, this short parody, but he does it so perfectly. And then just as we get him, it just has like the world seems right. He turns off the galvanic beams, he saves the day, saves the universe, but he gets residual discharge, gets shot in the chest twice, and he dies. And it's sad and it's moving. And there's this one quote that I want to give because it's absolutely wonderful, right? And it not only works well in the context of this story, but it works well in Doctor Who in the whole, which I love it for that. And it's one of those quotes that has stuck with me ever since. And it's one of them quotes that whenever I read or watch Doctor Who and review it for you all, it's always that thought that's in the back of my mind, sort of leading me in the direction of what the meaning of Doctor Who is, and why it's so important to myself and to others, and to you beings listening at home. And that quote is simply this. The quote is spoken by his companion Emma, and she goes, "He was never cruel and never cowardly. It will never be safe to be scared again." And then the Master leads Emma away. Behind them, the Doctor regenerates. And the Master goes, "It's impossible, beyond all known laws of the universe." And this is the quote, right? This is the important part. Emma then goes, "Maybe even the universe can't bear to be without the Doctor." That there is a true fact, because the universe, if you think about it, not just the universe in general, but fans, us, me, you, listening to me talking, you listening, we couldn't bear to be without the Doctor. The Doctor is a staple of who we are at this point in our lives. And the Doctor is a staple of the human race. It's been around since the 60s. It is an ever present, ever looming entity. Even when the show was at its lowest, it still had its hardcore fans. And even now, where it's going through a change and it's going through differences, and there are people who hate it, and there's people that love it, and there are people that have started watching, and people who've started watching again, no matter what side of the coin that you are on. Doctor Who is is the fans and the universe. The fans couldn't bear to be without the Doctor. That's why the Doctor always regenerates. Technically, the Doctor's only meant to regenerate 13 times, but he's regenerated multiple times. He's been the 14th Doctor. He's been the now the 15th Doctor. He's, if you think about it, technically, they're past 15 because how many times David Tennant faked regenerating, and you had Peter Capaldi with a faked regeneration as well, and you also have the Hand that regenerated into another Doctor. Um, so you could even say he's past the 15, but they will keep doing Doctor Who, not just as long as it's popular, but even if the show got cancelled for some unknown reason, fans would still um, watch Doctor Who. And it's that idea of that the universe couldn't bear to be without the Doctor. And that's a true enough fact to me, and I'm sure it's a true enough fact to you all listening. And again, that's what goes through my mind all the time whenever I'm reviewing anything to do with Doctor Who. It's just that fact of like I couldn't bear to be without, and neither could the universe. And that's brings us lovely into Joanna Lumley as the female Doctor, the first female Doctor. Um, and as I was watching the behind the scenes footage, Stephen Moffat, he says himself, he goes, yeah, how long the show had been going on, it was inevitable that the Doctor would be a woman eventually. And this was Stephen Moffat back in 1999. He said this, and he's since said it since, the fact of how like the Doctor saw the Master become a girl, a woman, and that there was no way the Doctor wasn't not going to give it a go also. Um, and Joanna Lumley as the first female Doctor, and not just even the first female Doctor, Joanna Lumley as the Doctor is perfect. Genuinely, Joanna Lumley is not just a fantastic actress, but also the fact of if she was like became the Doctor in the actual run of the show, again like Rowan Atkinson, I'd be completely fine with it. I'd be completely fine with Jim Broadbent, with Hugh Grant, with Richard E. Grant. I don't think Hugh Grant would do it now, but generally I would be fine with all of them. But there's this thing about Joanna Lumley that just works so well. She's like Rowan Atkinson. When you just see her, you're like, yeah, that person could be the Doctor. Genuinely, you just look and go, yeah, I can see the Doctor in them. They have so much about them. And Joanna Lumley, when she plays the Doctor in this, she's flirtatious, she's silly, but she can tell she's incredibly like we don't get to see a lot of her, but you can tell she's incredibly smart, potentially very clever. And again, the whole idea behind it is played for a joke, and that she flirts with the Master, and she flirts, and the Master flirts back, and they go off in arm in arm. It's played for a joke, played for a laugh, but it's funny, but also it would work. That generally, if I saw Joanna Lumley as the Doctor, I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. So the casting here is perfect. And I haven't even spoke about Jonathan Payne yet, or Price. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. He's the best. Again, he's the best Master we never got. He is the Master all the way through this, right? He never sort of regenerates. But again, he's perfect. He has the laugh. He has the look. He has the the way of announcing things, and he has is like generally if they decided to do a big finish parody of this series of bringing back Rowan Atkinson or any of the other actors, or bringing back a parody Doctor, but keeping Jonathan as the Master, and have like a jokey sort of parody big finish series, I would listen to it because Jonathan plays a perfect Master. Again, if you took him and put him into the actual show, he would work perfectly with any of the Doctors, whether from classic or modern Doctors. Maybe you'd probably might have to make him a bit more serious in the mainline show, but Even so, it works perfectly. There is no bad casting here. Like, if you want to see perfect casting, just look at this list. And then if you don't believe it, watch it, and then you will believe, yeah, 100%, each one of these could have been the Doctor. It's kind of like you see him sometimes on Twitter when people say, oh, the Avengers, if it came out in the 90s, and then you look at it and you've got all the young actors of the 90s, all the stars of the 90s playing, like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Bruce Banner, X, Y, and Z, you can sort of imagine what it would be like. Well, here, if Doctor Who had carried on into the 90s, who we would have got as a Doctor? Maybe we would have got Rowan Atkinson. Maybe we would have got Rich D. Grant. Or maybe, again, we would have had Paul McGann. Then it could have been Rowan Atkinson, Rich D. Grant, which are kind of funny because Rich D. Grant and Paul McGann are both really close best friends, and they did a movie together with each other. So again, that would be perfect. Again, Jim Broadbent, I heard on the grapevine that he wanted to be the Doctor, or he was planned to be the Doctor at one stage, which again I would have been perfectly fine with because he's a fantastic actor. So that would have been great. Again, Hugh Grant, don't think he would do it nowadays, but again, Hugh Grant would have been perfect in the 90s. And Joanna Lumley, if they were mad and crazy enough back in the 90s, probably wouldn't have happened. But if they were mad and crazy enough in the 90s to have a female Doctor, then Joanna Lumley would have been a perfect option, to be honest. And this is basically the Doctor Who, if it still lived in the 90s. And overall, my thoughts on this parody is it's perfect. It is genuinely perfect. Everything about it is funny. It is witty. It is clever. It is silly. It is purely Doctor Who. It hits all the right notes. It makes fun of itself, to the point where you're not sort of being mean, but you're actually being like, yeah, we all know the Doctor doesn't explain things. We all know about the techno babble. We all know how, like, sometimes how a bit silly it can be when the Doctor and Master are constantly trying to be sort of the best, and sort of cleverly sort of barb with each other, being like, I'm the smartest, I'm the smartest. Well, I knew you'd go back in time, so I bribed the architect. Well, I went back in time and I took the architect to a nice fancy dinner. Well, I went back in time and I gave him a nice fancy dinner and I took him out and I took him in, blah, blah. We all know those tropes of Doctor Who. So Stephen Moffat did a fantastic job. It looks fantastic. Actually, a lot of the sets and the Daleks were from a short film that somebody had made during the 90s, and it was done so well that they actually used the Daleks and some of the sets from that short film that a fan did. So overall, it's perfect. It is. For a short 4-episode parody that came out in 1999, it is perfect. And I don't need to explain, because if you've seen it, you just know. And if you haven't seen it, I'll explain later. Well, you go and watch it and then come back here and re-listen to this, and then it will all make sense. Yeah, overall, perfect. There is nothing that I do not like about this. I love everything about it, and I wish we just had more. Genuinely, this is something that I wish Comic Relief did all the time. Like, I know they do parodies, but I wish that they would do a lot more sort of Doctor Who sort of parody episodes where, like, don't bring in the modern day Doctors, because I know they have done it technically. They did the one with the 10th Doctor and the 5th Doctor. I know they did one of those and they did others, but I personally would love to see, something like this where you take it completely out, you get new Doctors in, you get a new story, and just have fun with it. Do a prequel, do a sequel, do whatever you want. Just follow this formula that we have here, and then do it for a modern Doctor. Like, make fun of the modern era of Doctor Who. You know what I mean? Fun. I think it'd be fantastic. And it being its 25th anniversary this year, this Comic Relief, it'd be the perfect time to do it. We'll see. If, I again, like I said, I haven't seen the live show, so I can't comment on if they did do it or not. If they do it, I'll review it. If they don't, well, we still have this episode. It's 25 years young today, and it's been an absolute pleasure to review it and to watch it again, because this is genuinely a parody that I watch at least once a year. I watch it because it's just hilarious. It's fun. And now I've now seen it twice, and now I don't have to watch it for another 2 years, which more than likely I will watch it again next year because it's that good. But that's my thoughts and feelings on The Curse of Fatal Death. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all liked it. Not much to talk about it because, again, it is quite short. But most importantly, as well as your enjoyment, is that don't forget to donate to Comic Relief. There are different ways to do it. You can phone, you can text, you can send a check in. The number for is, if anybody wants to phone up themselves and to donate, the number is 03457 910 910 if you live in the UK. And you can donate that way. Or you can do it online using a credit card, debit card, or Google Pay, Apple Pay, or PayPal. Okay, so donate, celebrate, get the word out, let everybody know about Comic Relief, do something funny, do something silly, have fun, watch this, share it, all that jazz, and thank you very, very much for listening. I've been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.